Hey kiddos. So you've been introduced to John Milton just a little bit in some of his sonnets, and you understand that he had quite a difficult later life. He grew up, with a pretty easy young life. Had some real hardship later in his life, which probably led to some of the questions that he asks in his great epic, Paradise Lost. I wanted to give you just a little bit of information prior to class so you can think about it. I want you to get your anthology out and open it up to page 723, and there you'll find the book's little intro to Paradise Lost. And when you're finished with this screencast, I'd like you to go ahead and read it. It will reiterate some of the things that I say to you, but will be a good review and give you a little background. Tomorrow in class we'll be reading the opening of Paradise Lost together in class, and then your homework for the weekend will be to read all of book one. And of course, here on the haiku page, you can find study questions along with some additional information. And Paradise Lost is such an interesting piece. It's considered one of the greatest poems in the English language. It is Milton was really attempting to write the definitive English epic. He wanted to do for the English language what Homer and Virgil had done for Greek and Latin, and what Dante had done for the Italian language. So he'd originally planned actually to base his epic on Arthurian legend, which we haven't studied yet, but we're going to, because a lot of those myths were kind of the foundation of the English pride and nationalism. But he decided that he wanted to turn his attention to some more universal questions, and so he decided to focus on, the loftiest topic, I suppose, of them all, and that is the account of humanity itself, the Genesis account of creation and the fall. Of course, this is quite an ambitious project, but Milton was determined to write this definitive English epic, and many people feel that he's done just that. Certainly, this poem and Milton himself are held in incredibly high esteem. So just to give you an idea of the dates, Milton actually started, here are his dates, we're looking at 17th century, so we're actually reaching just outside, on the other side of the Renaissance. But Milton is 7 when Shakespeare dies. So in Milton's early life, Shakespeare is still writing plays, and that's kind of important. He was heavily influenced, of course, by Shakespeare's work. And so we're reaching just a little bit, but you will see the connection between Faustus and Macbeth and Satan in Paradise Lost, and so I just couldn't resist the temptation to go ahead and talk about it now. So you can see Milton's dates here, and you should know that he started Paradise Lost in 1642, and then it was first published in 1667, so real close to the end of his life, and he spent many, what is that, 25-ish years writing Paradise Lost, if you can imagine, dabbling in it. Later in his life, in 1652, we talked about this with the sonnet, but his only son died, he became totally blind, and then his wife died, and so at 45 he was blind, widowed, with 3 small children, and that it is at that point that he began to work with Paradise Lost the most, and you, I think, will understand why as you read it. Someone at that point who had dedicated a good portion of his life to faith, to religious study, might begin to question why there is evil and why there is bad things happening, why there are bad things happening in the world, excuse me. So, if this is an epic, then, like Dante and Virgil, you've read some epics, you know what to look for. We're going to look for epic conventions when we read, so I want you to pay attention to that. The Paradise Lost is written in blank verse. You'll remember that because that is often called Marlowe's mighty line, and that is unrhymed iambic pentameter. And it tends to follow the common characteristics of the epic that were established by Homer, right? So make some notes about this. The epic, it's a long and narrative poem, not lyric but narrative because it tells a story. It is written in an exalted tone. It has an elevated style, and it tends to glorify characters of high position. The epic hero, of course, as you know, is going to be noble and very heroic and very virtuous. And the virtues of the hero tend to represent the particular culture or race or are of great historical significance. Remember, in an epic, the setting is vast. It covers wide amount of space, a whole nation or an entire universe. In this case, it will be the entire world. And the action in an epic consists of, all these great courageous deeds. Another epic convention would be that we would see elements of the supernatural periodically intervene in the action as well. So I want you to look for all of these epic conventions. Of course, they'll be cataloging, and we will begin in the middle of things, and lots of epic similes. So as you're reading, I want you to mark your epic similes. Really pay attention to that, and your study questions will help you do that. Okay, so the controversial aspect of the poem, I think you'll see right away, and that is that Milton is dealing with a biblical topic, so he borrows his subject, right? The fall of man from the Bible. Got the narrative in Genesis, and then the war in heaven from Revelation. So he kind of uses those biblical texts to write his work. Well, but you have to remember, an epic is a piece of fiction. And so what he writes sounds so biblical, but he just takes ideas from the biblical story and then he fictionalizes these ideas, right? So we have to be real careful about assuming that it's biblical text and forgetting that what we're reading is fiction. Now, another real important and controversial piece is the books that we're going to read, and the first great, some might say epic hero that Milton introduces is the character of Satan. And one of the things that Milton is trying to do in Paradise Lost is to help the reader understand Satan's motivation, why he does what he does. So he is the main hero. He gets most of the lines, and we really are meant to understand what's going on in his head. While everything he does is for evil, of course, we are meant to perhaps admire his fortitude, his strength, his will, but we are meant to see the flaw in it. Don't forget that all of our heroes, our epic heroes even, can have a great flaw. So we're meant to see the flaw in Satan, but we're meant to see the potential for greatness in Satan as well. So, and this can make people very uncomfortable. I would encourage you not to see Satan as a hero that we're supposed to admire, but more as a tragic hero, one that we're supposed to watch, one that is supposed to make us feel fear, one that is supposed to make us feel pity, and then one that is supposed to teach us something about ourselves. We'll draw some real nice parallels between Satan and Macbeth and Faustus. Satan is a very Renaissance character, and I want you to think about what's going on in the Renaissance world while you're reading his lines. So don't let them make you feel uncomfortable. Don't be turned off by the subject matter. Remember, it's fiction, and remember that Milton, his presentation of Satan is very deliberate, and of God as well, although we're not going to read those books. So there is some ambiguity about how we're supposed to feel about Satan, and I think that ambiguity is supposed to also kind of mirror the human condition, right, in its fallen state. I mean, Milton wants to know why, if the universe is created by a good, kind God, we see so much bad and so much evil in the world. He really wants to know, and so through the character of Satan, he tries to explain that. That's kind of his ultimate goal. So the attraction of Satan and the remoteness of God aren't really meant to reflect the true character of either of those beings, but the exile of fallen man, right? And Satan ends up becoming an enemy because of his attractive and compelling qualities. And then God is so foreign, so alien, because the fallen world is not in tune with him. And so don't think that Milton's trying to develop the true characters of these, but instead he's trying to represent mankind's state through these characters. What you'll see in the back here is a very famous painting of the fall of Satan. So remember that Satan is Lucifer, an angel, before he's cast out of heaven. We'll talk more about this. And this is a very famous painting regarding his fall. Paradise Lost has probably created more artwork than just about any other piece of literature. And we're going to look at some of that artwork and talk about some of that artwork. And I may even ask you to, to think a little bit about how the artwork represents the poetry. So, if you will now turn this off and read the introduction to Paradise Lost in your textbook on page 723, and then you can stop and we'll start Paradise Lost together in class tomorrow. Make sure to go ahead and grab the study questions off the haiku page and any other material that you think you might want to have in class.